805 West Linden Street. It stood like any other forgotten house in Boise, Idaho. A weathered old craftsman with creaking steps and cracked windows, tucked quietly into a neighborhood of aging homes and silent evenings. But what happened inside that house in the summer of 1987 would stain it forever. It was no longer just a house, it was something darker. It began on June 29th, 1987. Preston Murr had just attended a funeral. He was 21 years old, young, restless, and angry. He'd been drinking hard. By nightfall, a fight broke out. Police were called. Preston received a ticket. But that wasn't the worst of it. Someone had threatened him. Not just words, a promise, a warning. Someone was out to kill him. Panicked and paranoid, Preston did what anyone in his state would do. He turned to his friends. He drove to a Circle K convenience store where he met Daniel Rogers and Darren Cox. Rogers was someone he trusted, someone he considered a brother. He begged him. He needed help. He needed a gun. He believed someone had stolen his firearm and now wanted him dead. Rogers said he had a gun back at his house at 805 Linden Street. Preston believed him. The three men drove through the dark streets of Boise. It was already past midnight. When they pulled up to the Linden house, the street was still silent. The porch light buzzed overhead. No one would ever imagine the horror that was about to unfold. Inside, something shifted. What started as panic turned into rage, and then gunfire. Bleeding, he stumbled out the front door, down the wooden steps, across the lawn. He limped to the neighbor's house next door, pounding desperately on the door. He screamed, begged, cried out for help. The neighbor looked through the window and saw a man in terror, smeared in blood, pleading for his life. The neighbor didn't open the door, frozen in place. They watched as another figure appeared behind Preston, grabbed him, and dragged him back toward the Linden house, back through the door that had let him escape, and then down in the basement. No one could hear his final screams. Rogers fired a shot to Preston's head, killing him instantly. But it didn't end there. Rogers and Cox began cutting the body apart, dismembering Preston with horrifying calm. They placed the remains into plastic bags, wrapped in layers of tape. Then, they loaded the pieces into a vehicle and drove them far from Boise up to the edge of Brownlee Reservoir. There, they dumped what was left of him into the water, like garbage. The next morning, blood still stained the neighbor's front porch. But Preston was gone. The Linden house sat in silence. No one answered the door. No one spoke the night before. But something dark still lingered in the air and unease that would never leave. In the days that followed, parts of Preston's body began to wash up along the banks of Brownlee Reservoir. Fishermen found limbs wrapped in plastic. Investigators traced the evidence back to Rogers and Cox. Both were arrested. Rogers was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Cox, who helped dispose of the body, served just 6 years. 805 Linden Street was never the same. Neighbors whispered of flickering lights inside the empty home, of footsteps pacing in the basement, of bloodstains that seemed to reappear on the porch, no matter how many times they were scrubbed away. Some said they heard crying. Others claimed to see a pale figure at the window, staring down at the street, watching, waiting. Over time, the house earned a name, the Chop Chop House, a nickname that spoke of what had happened inside of the violence, the betrayal, But behind the nickname was a real story, a real victim, a real horror. And long after the blood dried, long after the neighbors moved on, the house still stood, waiting. It didn't come from a movie or a ghost story whispered at camp. It happened in a quiet neighborhood to a young man who never made it out alive. And if you ever find yourself walking past a creaky old house in Boise, remember, some places Dante just hold memory, some places hold screams forever.